Hello, BookTube. Well, we come to it at last, that melancholy moment, the last mail haul of the week. And this dark sky afternoon here in Boston, rain threatening all day long, but never quite happening. We've got a few packages here, and this particular mail haul ends in a box, but it's a tiny little thing. It's a pathetic little box. It's a box that hasn't had its Wheaties. So let's see if our last mail haul of the week can have a squeal-worthy book, something that I've waited all week for and didn't know. Okay. All right. Well, the first one certainly is not that. Uh, okay, it serves me right for setting it up that way. This comes out in early November, and it's a silly subject, but it does have an attraction to it. This is Churchill, the statesman as artist, and this need in the last 60 years to venerate every single last thing about Churchill just mystifies me. But I mean, in a way, it doesn't mystify me because it was Churchill's aim, and as he himself put it, your own history and biography is easy to direct if you're the one doing the writing. But the thing that it has to recommend it is that it is a volume that's crafted by David Carradine, who's one of my favorite living historians. His introduction will be worth it. His introduction to this book, as silly as the organizing conceit of the book is, his introduction will be a marvel of intelligence and eloquence. So I'll read it for that. I'll probably read the rest of it as well. I'm hoping there are no pictures. No, there are pictures. There's a full-color inset. Oh, God. All right, well, anyway. Not exactly squeal-worthy. Groan-worthy, maybe. But let's move on. Let's see if we can't find something a little bit more palatable than Churchill Le Master. Oh, okay, good. All right. This is squarely in my swing zone. This is World War II history. It probably comes out in November, yes? No, December, early December. This is Airborne in 1943, the daring Allied air campaign over the North Sea by Kevin Wilson, who did a previous book, Blood and Fears. I think we saw it on this channel. This channel might be that old. In the year 1943 saw the beginning of an unprecedented bombing campaign against Germany. Over the next 12 months, tens of thousands of air crews flew across the North Sea to drop bombs on German cities. They were opposed not only by the full force of the Luftwaffe, but by a nightmare of flak, treacherous icy conditions, and constant mechanical malfunction. Yes, they were also opposed by every right-thinking, conscientious person anywhere in the world as a campaign of obvious terror against civilians and children and old people. Most of these courageous crews were either shot down or killed or taken prisoner by an increasingly hostile enemy. It'd make you hostile too. If your small hamlet towns were being targeted and bombed into smithereens, it'd make you hostile too if tens of thousands of your innocent, non-combatant civilians were being killed in firestorms. This is the story of the everyday heroism of these crews. Oh my! All right. Well, at least we know what kind of a book it is. It's designed to celebrate the victors. When it was widely believed that the Allies could win the Second World War by air alone, American pilots had a special role in the Dam Busters campaign in particular. Even before the attacks on Pearl Harbor, scores of eager pilots traveled across the Canadian border to train with other future Dam Busters, all eager to take part. Authoritative and dramatic, Kevin Wilson's Airborne in 1943 brings these remarkable men and women to life. Okay, great. I'm sure it does, and it'll be authoritative in its own lane. I'll definitely read it. Could be really good. If I seem to remember that Blood and Fears ended up pleasing me a lot more than I thought it would. I'm hoping that there's some moral counterbalance somewhere in here. I'm hoping. The airborne bombing campaign conducted in Germany, the Dam Buster campaign, is a perfect example, but all of the airborne bombing campaigns conducted in Germany in 43, 44, 45, when the war had turned, when German efforts were clearly not going to produce a long-term victory, a Europe under Nazi control, most of those airborne campaigns had an active element, and that element grew with time, of simple, snarling, bare-toothed vengeance. And you might say, some people did at the time, that that is a perfectly human thing, that that's part of what you get in war. I don't agree with that. I think that someone who sits at a table and coldly, methodically plans a bombing campaign on cities that their own intelligence tells them have no military value, that person is as much of a monster as the larger enemy state they're fighting against. I think there were plenty of people at the time who thought that way, and I think that way myself. But maybe, I mean, the pub sheet obviously wants to celebrate the heroism of these crews and the hardships that they faced. Okay, the book might do more than that. So, come December, I will gobble it right up. So, a World War II history, but not exactly a Steve book. Yeah, could end up being. Let's see here. Oh, okay. Have we seen this already? I don't think so. This is from this comes out in January. This is historical fiction for next year. And this is Bear No Malice by Clarissa Harwood. Did we see this already? I can't remember if maybe we saw this. Maybe we saw this author's last book, Impossible Saints. Let's see here. Beaten and left for dead in the English countryside, clergyman and reformer Tom Cross is rescued and nursed back to health by Miranda and Simon Thorne, reclusive siblings who seem to have as many secrets as he does. Tom has spent years helping the downtrodden in London while lying to everyone he meets, but now he's forced to slow down and confront his unexamined life. Miranda, a skilled artist, is haunted by her painful past and unable to imagine a future. Tom is a welcome distraction from her troubles, but she's determined to relegate him to her fantasy world, sensing that any real relationship with him would be more trouble than it's worth. Besides, she has sworn to remain devoted to someone she's left behind. When Tom returns to London, his life begins to unravel as he faces the consequences of both his affair with a married woman and his abusive childhood. When his secrets catch up with him and his reputation is destroyed, he realizes that Miranda is the only person he trusts with the truth. What he doesn't realize is that even if she believes him and returns his feelings, he can't free her from the shackles of her past. Okay, so this is set in Edwardian Italy. Just full-bodied historical fiction, character-driven historical fiction is what it sounds like. Character-driven in the sense that it doesn't sound like there are any famous historical epics, events, or people. They'll all be in the background. This will be just characters who happen not to live in the present. Fantastic. I'm on board. Pegasus, I tell you, they're so good. Just as a publisher, they're so good. As a rule, every publisher has flubs, but let's see what we've got next here. Okay. All right. I didn't request this. This is from Simon & Schuster. It's a novel. It's by Sam Lipsyte, and it is called Hark. H-A-R-K. That is the cover. Eye-catching cover design. Okay. Listen, before Hark, was it ever harder to be human? Was it ever harder to believe in our world? That's the opening line of the book. Reading the two opening lines in Sam Lipsyte's novel Hark might make you want to cry. If you're familiar with Lipsyte, you'll know that what sounds like a cri de coeur is in fact a sly setup for a world gone catawampus. A world gone catawampus. Okay. One you know as our own, but flung slightly into the future and partly askew. If you squint, you'll recognize the political and cultural turmoil, environmental catastrophe, and exploding inequality, and you'll be able to imagine the rise of a false savior who promises well-being during spiritually corrupt times. As one character says, your brain gets tired, brittle. It's a bother to be attuned to the bleakness all the time. You crave a certain stupor, aka belief. Enter Hark Mourner, an anodyne, a cipher-like guru who has developed a program he dubs mental archery after seeing a toy bow sticking out of a trash can. It's a mashup of nonsensical aphorisms, false history, meditations, and yoga. And let's see, we have an example. Yes, an example of a Harkism. It's not for the poor, for the dumb poor, or the smart poor, or the smart rich. It's for the kind of dumb rich, and the sad middle, and the corporations, and the students, and the single people, and the married people, and all the people in the workout clothes, somewhere in that spectrum. Also, kind of people who refer to themselves as seekers. Oh, no, no, no. We still haven't had our little birds and bees talk. No, no, no. You can't attack packages that haven't been opened. Here, let's look at that. What's that? What's that? This is one predatory dog. She has less interest in things that where she doesn't think there's something living inside it. What's that? Huh? What is that? What is that? What is that? What? She's very eagerly looking at this thing. All right, there you go. This one's flat, so she has to work on it. She has to figure out how to do it. You want me to hold that up for you, Peanut? She'll figure it out. So, a book about a false messiah. Hark, due in the new year, due in January. So I don't have to think about it for the time being. Still no Steve book, definitely. But it doesn't matter, because none of you are paying attention to whether or not there are Steve books, or even to these books at all. All you noticed, the only thing, I should mark it in the video description, so you don't go straight to it, was that moment where the little Fraulein did this with her hands to try and grab the package. That was it. That's all. Nobody cares about me. Anyway, let's move on. This thing. Look at the size of this thing. Could easily fit in a manila envelope, whatever it is. Say it's in one of these things that don't even open correctly. You just have to... Okay, this is from Basic Books, another great publisher. This comes out soon. This comes out in early September. This is The Virtue of Nationalism. From Britain and Italy to the United States and China, nationalist movements are gaining political power and reshaping the global order. In the footsteps of theorists such as Samuel Huntington and Francis Fukuyama, who explained their respective moments in international relations, comes a much-anticipated, much-needed book about nationalism, perhaps the least understood concept in modern political discourse. Okay, well, it's a pub sheet, not the book, but that's a straw man. The thing that is sweeping across the world is not nationalism. It's xenophobia. And there's a big difference between those two things. Xenophobia is what makes nationalism turn rabid, rancid. Xenophobia is the kind of nationalism where you don't just love your own country, you hate all other countries and want to kill their inhabitants. There's a big difference. In this book, Dr. Yoram Hazony, president of the Herzl Institute in Jerusalem and director of the John Templeton Foundation's project in Jewish philosophical theology, uncovers the historical, philosophical, and theological roots of the forces that yielded Brexit and the Trump presidency and are reshaping the international system. He contends that liberal universalism, exemplified by super-rational institutions like the European Union and the United Nations, seeks uniformity, a single political constitution appropriate for all mankind, whereas nationalism cherishes diversity of language, law, tradition, and religion. I don't know if you can hear me over the chaos. And that summary is absolutely true, but you can tell even from the summary where your sympathies are supposed to lie. You're supposed to read that description, a single political constitution appropriate for all mankind, and recoil. You're supposed to recoil from that. That's what these rabid nationalists all across the world want you to do when they mention globalists, when they mention globalism. They want you to recoil from the idea of a worldwide government. I guess those of us who are old-style Star Trek fans find that confusing. In the wake of Brexit and the election of Donald Trump, okay, I get it. Thanks. Countless words have been penned and uttered about nationalism, many accusing its proponents of racism, hatred, and xenophobia. You're mixing terms. In the wake of those two events, both of which were xenophobic events, much has been penned about xenophobia masquerading as nationalism, as healthy love of your own country. So if you equate the two, then, well, anyway, let's go on here. But nationalism was not always considered malicious, nor is it now considered malicious. Indeed, it inspired people to challenge empires and colonial powers, while such venerated figures as John Stuart Mill, Mahatma Gandhi, and David Ben-Gurion considered themselves naturalists. Is it possible that the wrong lessons were drawn from the 20th century's great conflicts? That universalism and global governments, though well-intentioned, might not advance liberal values and principles? Okay, well, I am going to argue with this professor. That is for sure. That's good, though. That's very good. Oh, God. Okay, he's very young. And he lives in Jerusalem. Okay, okay, great. I'm going to argue with him, but that's okay. So this comes out in early September. I will read it tonight. And I will see what kind of a very delicate Bolshoi ballet an author who lives in Jerusalem has to do in order to talk about how nationalism is not toxic, and how it's globalism that carries out the evils that that are alluded to in that pub sheet. I would think that if you live in Jerusalem, you have a thinner ice to stand on than most people do when it comes to. Well, anyway, we shall see. It's due right away. It's due right around the corner, so I'll just read it tonight and find out. And then we have the last thing, our last book of our last mail haul of the week, and look at this thing. It could easily be a slim volume of poetry. Let's take a look and see. After all, as several of you have tartly reminded me, some people don't get any books in the mail. And I need that reminder. So let's see. This is from Oxford University Press, and it is due in, again, early September. This one's due on Citizen on the 1st of September. This is Citizen Protectors: The Everyday Politics of Guns in an Age of Decline. There we go. This is by Jennifer Carlson, and the cover, I'm sure you can notice, is red, white, and blue with guns forming the American flag. From gang and drug-related shootings to mass shootings in schools, shopping centers, and movie theaters, reports of gun crimes continue to fill the headlines of newspapers and news programs. At the same time, a different kind of headline has captured public attention, a steady surge in pro-gun sentiments among Americans. In Citizen Protectors, the author offers a compelling portrait of gun carriers, shedding light on America's complex relationship with guns. Delving into the world of gun carriers, the book sees Carlson spending time participating in firearms training classes, attending pro-gun events, and carrying a firearm herself. Through these experiences, she explores the role guns play in the lives of Americans who carry them, and shows how guns have become a part of everyday life. Carlson argues that through economic insecurity and social instability, gun carrying becomes a means of being a good citizen, an idea that not only pervades the NRA's public literature and statements, but its training courses as well. Okay. Public literature and statements is a pretty broad umbrella. Under the NRA's public literature and statements, it's quite a bit about who you're supposed to use your guns on. It's not explicitly stated, but it is completely unmistakable who these things are marketed to and who they're supposed to be used against. A much-needed counterpoint to the rhetorical battles over gun control, Citizen Protectors is a captivating and revealing book at gun culture in America, and is a must-read for anyone with a stake in this heated debate, which is everyone. Every single person in this country has a stake in this heated debate. As I remember, I've forced myself to remember every time I go out to the Brattle Bookshop, to the newspaper, just to run errands, to meet friends for lunch. Every time I go anywhere in public, every time I go anywhere that has a front door that isn't locked, every time I get on the subway here in Boston, I realize that this is a problem that affects me. Because it's just random chance that some overarmed citizen, even in Massachusetts, pops a stitch and starts shooting. That could easily happen. Every person that's happened to in America in the last 10 years, which is, over 10,000 people, every single one of those people has said, oh, it's not going to happen to me today. It's not going to happen to my kid today. And again, wow, this is once again, this is 3 books in a very small mail haul. This is another book that I am going to argue with the author the whole time, and I love that. I'm not that doesn't put me out of my comfort zone at all. There is only one sane, acceptable stance on guns in the United States. There's only one sane, acceptable stance, and this book is not going to take that stance. If this author is going to talk to people and live with them and carry a gun herself and go to gun shows, if the key word culture, gun culture, can be invoked, then this book is going to be far, far off the mark of the essential, obvious stance to take on guns, which is that citizens don't get to have them. But we'll see. I've heard plenty of passionate, intelligent people arguing the other side of that obvious point, so we shall see. I don't mind the arguments. I'm up to hear the arguments, absolutely. Unless the people who make them refer to the Second Amendment of the United States Constitution. I'm perfectly happy with you telling me all sorts of arguments about culture, about something being passed down from fathers to sons, about self-protection, about hunting, about recreation, about responsible use. I'm perfectly happy to hear all that from you, but I can't stand it when gun enthusiasts tell me that the reason I don't agree with them is because I'm reading a text wrong. That drives me nuts. I read text for a living, and I've been doing it a lot longer than the people who immediately invoke the Second Amendment of the United States Constitution, which enshrines that all citizens may keep guns to participate in well-ordered militias. I know the prose of the period, the syntax and diction of the period, the periods of the period, and the mind frame of the period better than anyone who's ever brought that argument up to me. I know exactly what that amendment says. It says what it says in plain black and white. Your right to own and bear a gun is not infringed as part of a well-ordered militia. The Second Amendment, nor any other part of the Constitution, guarantees an individual the right to own an assault rifle. That's just insane. Militias aren't individual, just private gatherings like the Elks Club. They're semi-official. They have rules and regulations. Anyway, I much prefer people to come at it from many other. There are many other approaches to take on the incredibly American question of gun violence, because this isn't citizen protectors already jilts the argument. It already tilts the whole field in the direction that its proponents wanted to go in, which is that guns protect their owners. The idea being that they protect their owners to a greater extent or in some more important way than they endanger the rest of us. That simply isn't true. That's demonstrably not true. But I'm not going to argue with you. I'll argue with this author. I'll take lots of notes, and then we'll see. I'll write it up. So we have an argumentative mail haul this time around. We have citizen protectors about guns in America. We have the virtue of nationalism, about the virtues of nationalism, but I think probably full of straw men, full of false equation of nationalism with rabid xenophobia. We have Hark, a novel by Sam Lipsyte, an author whose nonfiction I really like, but whose fiction has never done anything for me. So we'll give this a try in the new year and see. Then Bear No Malice by Clarissa Harwood, a historical novel, just a four-square historical novel by the sound of it. Then Airborne in 1943, about Allied air fighting over the seas in 1943. We'll see the Allied air bombing campaign in Germany in 1943. I would think is not defensible in the 21st century, but we shall see. This author is good, so I'll definitely listen to what he has to say. And then Churchill, the statesman as artist. Edited and introduced by a great historian, but Churchill, the statesman as artist, as the title of a book, has not only one inaccuracy, but two. So kind of a weird little mail haul here, but an argumentative one. I will be contesting with these books, and that just keeps me young. It keeps me 28. So I'm going to wrap this video up for now, and as usual now, I'm going to wrap this video up and then broom out this room because it's covered in confetti. Look at this. Look at that. Look at my little monster is done. I'm not going to stop her. She'll keep going. She has a lot more of that to do. And then I'll just clean up everything. But anyway, I'll wrap this up for now, but I'll see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.